Picture this. It is the middle of February. Outside, it is 19 degrees. The wind is cutting across the fields like a blade. You are standing at the edge of a gravel driveway in rural Indiana, looking at a farmhouse with no electric meter on the side of the building. No meter. You walk up to the front door. Someone lets you in. You take off your gloves, then your scarf, then your coat, because it is warm, not stuffy, not artificially heated warm, just warm. The kind of warm that sits in the walls and the floorboards and does not move. You look around for a thermostat. There is not one. You look for vents in the floor. Nothing. There is just a wall. A south-facing wall, painted dark, with a sheet of old glass mounted in front of it. That is the entire heating system for a family of 6. And it cost them $49 to build. What you are about to learn has been sitting in plain sight for over a century. It is not a product. You cannot buy it at a hardware store in a box with instructions. Nobody is going to run a commercial for it during halftime. No contractor is going to bring it up at your renovation quote because there is no labor markup on something a person can build alone in a single afternoon. This is the wall that heats a home without a furnace, without a utility bill, and without a single moving part. The Amish had been building it since the 1860s. A United States government research body documented it, confirmed it worked, and then the paperwork disappeared from every consumer guide ever printed. By the end of this video, you will know exactly how it works, exactly how to build one on a house you already own, and exactly why the people who profit from your heating bill have never once mentioned it to you. Stay with me. The most important detail in this entire video comes near the end, and it is the one piece that separates a wall that works for 2 seasons from one that works for 30 years. Most people who have heard of this technique assume it is some kind of modern off-grid trend, a homesteading fad, something people discovered on a forum 3 years ago and started calling revolutionary. It is not modern. It is not a trend. And the people who discovered it were not homesteaders on the internet. The core principle goes back to the late 1800s. A physicist studying how sunlight interacts with dense surfaces noticed something that should have changed construction forever. A dark, heavy wall facing the sun does not just absorb warmth, it stores it, like a battery. And then, hours after the sun has moved on, it releases that stored warmth slowly and steadily into whatever space sits behind it. The math on this is not complicated. Stone, brick, and dense concrete can hold heat for 8 to 14 hours after exposure ends. A properly designed wall starts releasing warmth in the late afternoon and continues through the coldest hours of the night. By the time the sun rises again, the cycle resets. This is not a new discovery. It was not invented in a lab. It was observed in nature, written down by builders, and then practiced quietly by communities that never stopped trusting what they could see with their own hands. The Amish were not the first people to use this principle, but they are almost certainly the last large community in the Western world that never stopped using it. Here is the physics in plain language, because once you understand it, you will never look at a sun-drenched wall the same way again. Sunlight carries energy. When that energy hits a dark surface, most of it is absorbed rather than reflected. A matte black surface absorbs roughly 95% of the solar energy that strikes it. A white or light-colored surface reflects most of it away. Now, if you take that dark absorbing surface and place a sheet of glass a few inches in front of it, something interesting happens. The sunlight passes through the glass and hits the dark surface. The surface heats up. The heat tries to escape, but the glass traps it. The air gap between the glass and the dark wall becomes a concentrated pocket of warmth. Temperatures in that gap can climb well above what the open air outside could ever reach, even on a cold winter day. That trapped heat conducts into the wall behind the dark surface, and the wall holds it. Dense materials store heat the way a cast iron skillet holds warmth long after you turn off the burner. The thicker and denser the wall, the longer it holds. Then comes the release. As the room temperature behind the wall begins to drop in the evening, the wall begins radiating its stored heat inward, slowly, steadily, without anyone adjusting anything. No thermostat needed, no fuel, no ignition, no monthly statement. The sun did the work during the day. The wall does the work at night. Here is where it gets genuinely useful for the average homeowner. Because everything described so far sounds like it requires a new build. Thick masonry walls, southern exposure designed from the foundation up, a construction budget and a plot of land. Most people watching this do not have any of that. They have a house that was built in 1968, with frame walls and vinyl siding and a gas furnace in the basement that cost them $300 a month from November through March. In the early 20th century, a builder in a rural Pennsylvania Amish community faced exactly that problem. His community was expanding. Young families needed homes quickly, and many of those homes were older frame structures. not the thick stone farmhouses of the previous generation. He could not rebuild the walls from scratch, so he adapted the principle instead. He designed an external panel system, a heat-absorbing surface attached to the outside of an existing wall, enclosed in salvaged glass, with two small openings cut through the wall to let air circulate. The dark panel absorbed heat. The glass trapped it. The air in the gap warmed up and rose, entering the room through a vent near the ceiling. Cooler air from the room was pulled into the gap through a vent near the floor. A continuous loop of warming air, running entirely on sunlight, with no fan, no electricity, and no moving parts. His cost estimate, adjusted for today's material prices, comes to between $40 and $65 for a wall section 8 feet wide and 6 feet tall. Families who retrofitted their homes using this approach reported heating bill reductions in the range of 40 to 60% in the first winter alone. This is the practical section. No diagrams, no engineering degree required. This is the sequence, in plain language. Step 1. Find your south-facing wall. In the northern hemisphere, south is where the winter sun travels. Stand outside your home at noon on a clear December or January day. The wall the sun hits most directly is your target. It needs at least 4 unobstructed hours of direct sunlight on the shortest days of the year. Step 2. Measure your target section. You are looking for a rectangle of wall surface, ideally at least 8 feet wide and 6 feet tall. Plat receives consistent sun without interruption from trees, neighboring structures, or overhangs. Step 3. Source your absorber panel. A sheet of half-inch plywood, or thin sheet metal, cut to your measured dimensions. Paint it with a flat high-absorption black paint. The kind sold for wood stoves and outdoor grills works excellently, and costs around $12 a quart. Apply to full coats. Let it cure for 48 hours before mounting. Step 4. Mount the panel to your existing wall using horizontal wooden furring strips. These strips create the air gap you need, approximately 3 to 4 inches between the painted panel and your house wall. The furring strips screw directly into your wall studs through whatever siding you have. Step 5. Cut your vents. 2 openings through your existing wall into the room behind it. One near the floor, one near the ceiling, each roughly 4 inches tall and 10 inches wide. These are your convection vents. Cool room air enters at the bottom, warmed air exits at the top. A metal louvered vent cover from any hardware store covers each opening from the inside, around $8 each. Step 6. Mount your glazing. An old storm window works perfectly. Cliff twin wall polycarbonate from a greenhouse supplier works even better. Mount it approximately 2 inches in front of your painted panel on a simple wooden frame. This outer layer is what traps the solar heat against the dark surface and prevents wind from pulling the warmth away. Total materials. Between $45 and $70, depending on whether you source second-hand or new. Total time. 1 Saturday afternoon for a person working alone. A retired schoolteacher in rural Ohio installed one on the south wall of her 1971 split level last winter. She bought her storm window at an estate sale for $4. Her painted panel was cut from a leftover sheet of plywood from a deck repair. Her total spend was $51. Her heating bill that January was $62 lower than the same month the previous year. By February, she had recovered her full material cost and was running at pure savings. She told me the hardest part of the whole project was finding a parking spot at the hardware store. Here is where most attempts at this system fail, and it is the reason some people build one of these walls, see modest results, and conclude that the principle does not work as advertised. The wall absorbs heat during the day. That part works reliably. The problem is what happens after dark. That same dark surface that pulled heat inward all day will begin radiating heat outward through the glass. Once outside, temperatures drop below the wall temperature. You lose a significant portion of what you collected. In some configurations, you can shed 30 to 40% of your stored heat back into the cold night air before sunrise. The fix is simple, and it is very old. A builder in Holmes County, Ohio, documented it in a handwritten notebook sometime in the early 1920s. He called it a night cover. The concept is exactly what it sounds like. An insulated panel, hinged or hung above the glazing, lowered into place at sunset to seal the wall behind a layer of insulation, raised again at sunrise to expose the dark surface to morning light. He built his version from straw batting sandwiched between thin boards, a rope and a cleat on the wall to hold it raised during the day. In modern terms, a sheet of rigid foam insulation, the kind available at any hardware store for around $18 per full sheet, cut to the dimensions of your collector and mounted on simple hinges at the top, accomplishes the same thing. You lower it at dusk, you raise it at dawn. 2 minutes of effort, twice a day. With the night cover in place, overnight heat retention, in a properly built system jumps from around 60% to above 90%. The wall warms through the night, almost as effectively as it collected through the day. Without the night cover, you have a decent daytime heater. With it, you have a system that heats your home around the clock on sunlight alone. That single notebook entry, written by a craftsman who never went to engineering school and never owned a thermometer more precise than the back of his hand, contains the difference between a project that impresses you for a week and one that changes your heating bill for the next 30 years. His great-granddaughter still lives in the same house. The wall he built has never been replaced. It has never been serviced. It has never failed. She told me her grandfather used to say that the best tool a man owns is the one he never has to pick up again once it is in the right place. This is the part of the conversation that makes some people uncomfortable, so say it plainly and move on. In the late 1970s, federal researchers conducted formal tests on passive solar wall systems, including designs very similar to what has been described here. The results were documented. The efficiency numbers were confirmed. Retrofit applications for existing homes were specifically evaluated and found to be practical and cost-effective for average homeowners. The research was published, it was filed, and it was never turned into a consumer guide, a building code recommendation, or a homeowner outreach program. The residential heating industry in the United States alone generates roughly $200 billion annually. That number includes furnace manufacturers, fuel suppliers, utility companies, service contractors, and the entire chain of businesses that depend on your home being unable to heat itself. A $49 wall that runs for 30 years without a service contract does not fit neatly into that economy. This is not a conspiracy. It is just the natural behavior of industries that benefit from complexity. The simpler the solution, the less room there is for anyone to charge you for it. And so the simple solutions get quietly left out of the conversation, generation after generation, until the only people still practicing them are the communities that opted out of that economy entirely. The Amish did not opt out of modern heating because they are opposed to warmth. They opted out because they never needed it. They had walls. You now have everything you need. The wall, the convection loop, the night cover, the sequence to build it on a house you already own, on a weekend, for less than the cost of a single tank of propane. This is not complicated knowledge. It never was. It is just old enough that most of us were never taught it, and the people who could have taught us had strong financial reasons not to. Here's what I want you to do right now. Before you close this video, go look at the south side of your house. Just walk outside and look at it. If the sun hits that wall, you are looking at a heating system that does not have a bill attached to it. Leave a comment and tell me what you see. Tell me what direction your wall faces. Tell me what your average heating bill ran last winter. Tell me if you have a tree in the way or a clear run of sunlight from morning to afternoon. This community is full of people figuring this out together, and your specific situation might be exactly the detail that helps someone else solve theirs. If this video gave you something real, subscribe. Not as a favor to me, because next week, the topic is an insulation method documented in a 1940s rural farm manual that costs $11 in materials and outperforms spray foam in head-to-head testing. Nobody is running ads for it. Nobody is selling it in a kit. You are not going to see it recommended by a contractor. But it works, and you are going to know exactly how to do it. The wall is yours now. Build it. The sun has been waiting.